And I'd like to start first by having all of our special guests a minute or two to introduce themselves to us. So let's start with Roger. Do you want to start?
Oh, I have to set the bar? Okay. My name's Roger Funk, and as I get used to this microphone, I apologize for that. I am the Chief of Police for Blaine Police Department. I've been there for just over a year now. Prior to that, I worked for the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office. Worked with Steve Harris for lots of years, 25 plus, lots of years. I was there for 28 years at the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office. Did a lot of different things there, from patrol, traffic, motorcycles, collision investigation. One thing that he and I share in common is both of us also did forest patrol out at Baker Lake, Mount Baker. That was one of the more unique experiences I've ever done in law enforcement. I grew up here in Bellingham, all the way through Geneva Elementary when I was a little kid, the old Geneva, with my wife in first grade. We've known each other since first grade. Then Fairhaven Middle School, Seaham High School. I went to Central Washington University, got my bachelor's degree in law and justice. A few years ago, I went back and got my master's degree in management. And then when Sheriff Tanksley was elected sheriff, it opened up an opportunity for me to put in for Chief of Police for Blaine, and I took that opportunity. And another connection here, Chief Potts was on my hiring panel. So either she voted for me or everybody else voted strong enough that I got it anyway. So.
Hello, wow, that is loud. I'm Steve Harris, the Undersheriff at the Sheriff's Office, which means that I'm number 2 to Sheriff Tanksley, and he sends his regrets he wasn't able to attend tonight. He's at a family event in Missouri, so not able to attend. I'm here to convey his thoughts and his messaging about the Sheriff's Office, and I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 30 years, including my time as a volunteer reserve deputy. And when Sheriff Tanksley was elected in 2024, he asked me to come up as his undersheriff, and I'm doing my best to make him proud and the rest of the citizens of the county. So thank you, Chief Potts. Oh, sorry.
Is this working? Yes, thank you. My name is Rebecca Mertzig. I'm the Chief of Police for the Bellingham Police Department. I started here in 2022, spent a majority of my career at the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, just a few counties down. Ended up there because I actually was born and raised here in Whatcom County, went to Ferndale High School, go Eagles. And after graduating high school, I went to Western, like a lot of people here who went to Western and stayed. But unfortunately, there was not a criminal justice degree, so there probably isn't anymore still. Yeah, maybe? No. So I went to Eastern and then got right on with the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office because I was part of a federally funded program that paid for college reimbursement. So if you're going to pay me, and I was going to do it anyway, I'll take that college reimbursement. And so spent 18 years in the Sheriff's Office, did everything from patrol to crimes against children, school resource officer, worked my way through the ranks, did a great program called Office of Neighborhoods, which is very much about community engagement. Ended up as the Chief of Police of Stanwood, and then the opportunity to come back home and be the Chief of Police of Bellingham came up in 2022. So had great conversations with former Chief Flo Simon, and she suggested I put in, and here I am. Love this community, love that I'm back home because I feel like I'm very invested in the safety of this entire area because, again, this is home for me. My family's still up here. My husband's a school bus driver for the Ferndale School District, so and I have a 7-year-old boy at home.
Hello, I'm Katy Potts, and I am the police chief at Western Washington University. I've been here almost 2.5 years, and I actually started my career in the suburbs of Chicago, and I spent 20 years there in my hometown. It was the only police department I applied for right after college, and I got hired, and I spent 20 years there and retired. I always knew I wanted to go into university policing, so after my time in Elgin, I went to Augusta University in Augusta, Georgia, and I spent almost 4 years there. And so now I've been here 2.5 years. Throughout my career, though, I have done a lot of different areas. We were very, very community-oriented in Illinois. And so I was a resident officer. Our city owned homes in higher crime areas, and we lived in them, and we had a big sign outside of our door that said, "Your police officer lives here." I put a lot of community programs together. I went through, I did recruiting, hiring, investigations, worked my way up to lieutenant there before I retired. Then what else have I done? I brought my husband with me, and he's a detective over at Bellingham now, so. Call that a win-win. Yes. So we've been working very closely. As a chief for a college campus, we rely a lot on the resources that are around us, which is the county, which is the city, and we'll take Blaine too if you want to come all the way in to help us out. But it's been great, and so I'm very honored to be here, and I look forward to hearing what the community and what kind of questions you guys have, so we know some of the areas maybe we need to work on, and then also what the other panelists have to say, so we can serve the entire Whatcom community, because resources are slim in all of our areas. So thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. We were going to start with finding out about what your oath of office is that you take, and just as a sort of starting point. So would Rebecca, would you like to start with? Is it okay to call you Rebecca?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so every officer, and it's actually, maybe I'll probably touch on this a little bit later, but taking an oath in office is an accreditation standard as well. The Bellingham Police Department is an accredited agency. We have been since 2016. But every officer in the state of Washington takes an oath when they become a peace officer in this state, but then and it's rather ceremonial, but we have Judge Lev with the municipal court swear in all of our new officers. I have 2 minutes for this. I don't know if I can go that long. Okay. So it's a pretty standard oath. It's, you're going to swear to uphold, defend, and obey the Constitution of the United States, the Bellingham Municipal Code, the laws of the state of Washington. But in addition to that, so we started kind of a new tradition at Bellingham PD where I have our new officers give that oath. But I also invite every commissioned officer who's present in the room to come up front, and we do an additional oath, and it's actually it's called the Oath of Honor, and it's from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. So IACP is a very large organization, and I have them all recite this. It's kind of almost like a renewal of vows, so to speak, and it's just for everyone there just to recommit to the commitments that we made when we first got hired, and it goes like this. It says, "On my honor, I will never betray my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will treat all individuals with dignity and respect and ensure that my actions are dedicated to ensuring the safety of my community and the preservation of human life. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions. I will always maintain the highest ethical standards and uphold the values of my community and the agency I serve." And that's something I'm super proud of, because I think, again, we can all swear to uphold, defend, and obey the laws, but I think that is a little bit more to the heart. So that's kind of something we've started recently.
Sure, I can go next. I brought two. I have one for the city of Blaine, and as special as that is, I have my original oath of office from June 27th, 1996, and I keep this in my office. And I make sure that my officers know that I have this because it is important. It was, Dale Brandlin was the sheriff at that time, so it's his name that's on there. And I won't give him bad marks for spelling my name wrong a couple different times throughout this document, but it is the original document that just adds character. But like Chief Mertzig said, it's pretty standard language about solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States. The Blaine one is very similar, Constitution, both United States, the state of Washington, the local ordinances. But something that I do, and if I have an opportunity or a need, I guess opportunity is a bad way to put it, but to do an administrative investigation on a complaint against any of our officers, an internal affairs investigation, this is one of the exhibits that I attach in our investigation, because this is our contract. This is our contract with our community, our city, our county, whichever agency we work for, the citizens, and that's our officer's contract, and they raise their right hand and they swear an oath to it. And so I attach that as an exhibit in that investigation. And if there's ever any wrongdoing, I remind them that we agreed to a contract. You need to uphold that. So I evidently, I'm down to 1 minute. That's all I have. I'm sorry.
Katy, would you like to?
Yeah, so just like has already been said, the oath of office is really when you take it, we're swearing to protect and serve our communities that have hired us. And so it's very similar. Our oath of office is very similar to theirs. I do it when we get hired, and then also when you get promoted. And I'm sure you guys probably do the same thing. We have a ceremony. We invite family. We invite other people, members of our community, anybody around campus that wants to go, because it really does mean a lot. And so when I did get to Western, we're not accredited, but we're working our way to that, which means you really have to take a look at your policies and your procedures. And we rewrote our oath because it wasn't very good. But so I asked the officers to provide input, and because they're the ones that are going to be swearing to it, they're the ones that have to uphold this oath. And so I said, provide some input. What do you want to swear to, and what is it that you want to tell your community? And so this, I did bring it with also because I told you, homework, universities. So it says, I do solemnly swear that I will enforce the law, support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of Washington, and that I will bear loyalty to the same, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of police officer of Western Washington University according to the best of my ability. So not only do they do this oath, we also have then, it's kind of like your oath of honor. We have a really long ethics statement, which I didn't bring, and they have to sign off on that as well. And not only with our officers, it's anybody that works for the police department because of the authority and ability to do a lot of things. So, I mean, I know I'm way over my minutes. Okay, so, but it really does mean a lot to all of us, and it's just, that's it, I'm done. Stop me.
And yes, we also have an oath of office at the sheriff's office. It's basically outlines the responsibilities and ethical standards. The Sheriff Tanksley, prior to administering the oath, actually meets individually with each one of the deputies, and we have corrections deputies and also our law enforcement deputies. The oath is essentially the same, other than calling him corrections deputy or law enforcement deputy. But other than that, it's the same. And he meets with them and talks about what it means and the importance of it, and that we actually file our oath after they sign it with the auditor's office. So it's officially recorded, and you have to go to the auditor's office and pull up the oath of office of anyone who's ever been sworn at the sheriff's office for, my memory, at least 30 years. So the oath is, I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the constitutional laws of the state of Washington, and the charter and ordinances of Whatcom County, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of Deputy Sheriff for Whatcom County, Washington, according to the law and to the best of my abilities, so help me God. So the last statement, we tell them that if they don't feel comfortable making that oath to God, that's entirely up to them, but it's in there.
Can I add one more thing real quick? It's changed over the years, not the oath, but I think the importance that's relayed at the sheriff's office. When Steve and I first got hired, I don't know if it was the same for you, but they marched me over to the auditor's office, and I stood before the auditor and I swore the oath with nobody else there. And I think we all recognize the value and the importance of that. And so we're all doing it in more of a ceremony because we want the officers to realize this isn't just a formality, it's of great value. Our officers in Blaine do it twice, once with the city clerk to do it officially for the paperwork, and then in front of city council at a council meeting with the mayor. So the mayor administers it, and that's more ceremonial, but it reflects the importance of it.
Oh, thank you very much. Next question is... What happened? I turned it off. Oh, you turned it off. Ooh. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Our next question was, what kind of training do your police officers receive regarding implicit bias and use of force? And how do you monitor the effectiveness of this training? You want to start with Katy?
I see your list. So when I was in Illinois, we had every single one, we had almost 200 officers at the department I worked for, and every single one of us went through implicit bias training. And so way we did that was, there was this organization that was putting together the training, and then we made instructors within the department, and then we trained everybody, and it was almost 40 hours of training to do this. And so I actually became an instructor in it, and it was called Fair and Impartial Policing, and that's how, ever since then, it's just, this is what we do in everything that we do in our day-to-day lives and how we interact with our community. So the way in which, let me look at the question again. So our officers here, they do receive it. They receive training through CJTC. We get, I know because I get it. I'm assuming they get it. They just assign us things that have to do with bias or with implicit bias. And then they also, through the university, we have a lot of stuff. So during our hiring, during our recruiting, if you're on any kind of team, you're going to take training to make sure that you're using a lens that doesn't have bias in it. And then the way in which that we monitor that at the university is through their performance evaluations, through the communications that we have, if we have any complaints and anything that we follow up on. And then I'm also now looking to try to get a proactive feedback from the community, and we're starting to implement that, where we're going to send out notices to anybody that was a witness or a victim on a call, even suspects. I'm going to ask them as well, like, how was that interaction with the officer? How could we have done better? What is some of this stuff? So it's just being aware and then leading from the top down and making sure your culture, that is the expectation of your officers. Thank you.
My turn? No, you go ahead.
Harris is next on the list. Oh, sorry. I can see her notes. I'm cheating. I see her notes.
Yeah, so every deputy participates in mandatory training on implicit bias. It's provided by the Criminal Justice Training Commission. Sheriff Tanksley is also a instructor on implicit bias and actually taught the class that I was in while he was the chief of police at Blaine, I believe. We also have policies specifically about implicit bias. We have policies on our use of force, and I know building trust in the community is a priority for Sheriff Tanksley. We have done tremendous increases in our community engagement up in Peaceful Valley, the Kendall area. We've reassigned 2 of our neighborhood deputies to the area. One of them speaks fluently in Russian. The other one speaks fluently in Spanish to try to have a little more outreach to the community and speak in their languages. Sheriff Tanksley has been part of direct community engagement. We tracked, I think, 180 hours last year of direct community engagement in communities, and we're hoping to do as much in 2025 as well. I hope that answered everything.
My turn. As the others have said, implicit bias training is part of our basic academy at the Criminal Justice Training Commission, or CJTC. Back in 2019, I think it was, Initiative I-940 was passed by the voters and subsequently changed into legislation called the Law Enforcement Training and Community Safety Act, or as we refer to it as LATAXA. We go through every 3 years, every officer has to go through a course on that, and implicit bias is a part of that curriculum. We get, as Chief Potts mentioned, we get online training from the academy. We have policies in Blaine that address this. I went through also Sheriff Tanksley when he was a chief. I assume it was Blaine. It might have been. May have been at Western. But it was quite a while ago. Him and one of our retired chiefs at the sheriff's office, he taught it. And what I loved about that when we did it is it was members of agencies, not just our agency, but we brought in lots of other people. And I thought that was really beneficial. And something that I do to monitor is I go to as many of these events as I can, and I don't get the feedback tonight I probably would get because you guys probably aren't Blaine residents, very many of you at least. But by going to Blaine events and meeting with people in Blaine, that's one of the questions I standard ask is, how are we doing? Tell me about your interactions, what's going on? And if complaints come in, I try to reach out myself as much as possible to talk to people that are complaining because I want to make them feel heard and I want to address the issues from the top down. So.
Yes, the same. Everything that's been mentioned already. We have a lot of state standardization in terms of implicit bias training. Additionally, we spent some federal grant dollars. I don't know if those will be coming back, but when we had those available, those funds, we spent it on some really phenomenal implicit bias training by Dr. Marks, and we actually invited all our local agencies to join us as well. And that was probably one of the most impactful implicit bias trainings I've been to. I've been to a few. I actually went to the one that was provided. It was in the Blaine station, I think, provided by one of your former deputy chiefs when I was in Snohomish County. So I think we're ahead of the curve here. We've got instructors that are leaders here, and so I think as a community we're doing a really good job in that area. Use of force wise, that's something that we are constantly monitoring and checking up on. One of the things I do, and it's just a personal thing, a personal choice that I've made because it's not in our policy, but I view every single use of force on a community member by a member of our agency. I do that so that when I speak in front of my community, I can say with absolute confidence that every single one of those was within policy and law. And to be perfectly honest, they are so patient and so professional when they have to apply force that I'm just, I'm very impressed with my own staff. And it's the result of three things. It's great policy, it's great training, and it's great supervision. So I use it as an opportunity to brag a little bit, but it's because I've seen every single one of them since I've been the chief of police here.
Well, thank you very much. The League of Women Voters is, of course, deeply concerned about the loss of support for diversity, equity, and inclusion at the federal level. And we believe that DEI makes our country safer and stronger. What is your role in making sure we in Whatcom County maintain our commitment to DEI? Do your institutions have written policies, procedures, and hiring practice to support DEI which can be shared with us? What proactive steps are you taking to build trust with historically underserved or marginalized communities in your jurisdiction? Any part of that? Undersheriff Harris, would you like to start this time?
Sure. I could tell you that Sheriff Tanksley is deeply committed to making sure our hiring processes are fair and equitable. One of the ways that we've done that recently is during the oral board process, which all of us have up here as part of our hiring process. We were traditionally just using members of the sheriff's office or other law enforcement agencies to participate in those oral boards. Now we're reaching out to community members and other folks without law enforcement background to get their input in our hiring decisions, at least evaluate the process as part of the oral board. Whatcom County does have policies that apply to all of our divisions, and then we follow state, federal laws. The sheriff's office actually has a separate RCW related to civil service laws that we have to follow when it comes to hiring processes. But I can just read you what the Whatcom County general policy is. It says Whatcom County is an equal opportunity employer. Participation of individuals of diverse ages, races, religions, cultures, abilities, and personalities contributes to our organization's success. Whatcom County recruits, selects, trains, promotes, and compensates employees and applicants without regard to race, color, national origin, sex, creed or religion, disability, age, marital status, sexual orientation, including gender identity, veteran status, or any other characteristic prohibited by law. And the only thing I would add to that is, again, I think almost all of us up here probably have civil service rules related to hiring processes.
Ours is different at the university.
But it's, we have to work through those processes. So really what we need to do is reach out to communities and recruit. And recruiting good people everywhere, not just at college campuses, but where our community actually resides. So we've loosened some restrictions on our hiring related to requirements for college degrees and using life experience and work experience to help support our goal to more diversify our organization.
All right. Roger?
Yes, thank you. So like Undersheriff Harris mentioned, bringing people that aren't law enforcement officers on the oral board, we do that as well for our oral board for hiring. We also do it for our promotional processes. So when we're promoting people to the rank of sergeant or higher, we bring in community members to be a part of that. We also have a policy that addresses it. We also have civil service rules. The sheriff's office has a set of civil service rules. So do municipalities. They're different, but similar. We adjusted our civil service rules in 2025 as a result of a law change that occurred. And I'll just read that just verbatim for what that says. An applicant for a position of any kind of civil service must be a citizen of the United States, a lawful permanent resident, or deferred action for childhood arrivals recipient. Whereas previously it just simply said you must be a citizen, period. So the civil service rules are adapting, but we have to work within those parameters. We're kind of limited on Just based on our applicant pool, we just don't get a lot of applicants. When I applied for law enforcement 29 years ago, there was 300 people that showed up that day to that test. We just did an oral board the other day, and we had 4 or 5 people is all we had. So as much as I want to diversify, I need those people to apply. So like the Undersheriff said, we need to reach out to those communities and just try to encourage people. We had a testing event, Bellingham hosted it Saturday. I was there just getting people to see us, like, hey, think about us, and talking to people at those testing stages. Lastly, since I still have a minute, although she's flipping it on me, so I'm gonna have to talk a little faster. I think one of the issues that we experience with DEI, and has anybody in this room heard of Simon Sinek? Do you know who Simon Sinek is? Simon Sinek is a great motivational speaker, leadership consultant, and he has a concept of start with why. And you start with the why of anything that you want to accomplish, and then you go to the how and then the what. And I think what we're doing with DEI is that's the what. That's what we want to get to, and people don't understand the why. And so when people are resistant to it, if you spoke about the content, the heart of it, they'd all go, yeah, I agree. But then when they hear the label, then they jump to their own conclusions, and they don't understand the why, even though they probably are going to agree with it. So I think that's what we can do better is get to the why, get to the heart of it. Stop. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
I'm going to take a little different spin on this. Everything that they said, we have civil service rules, we are committed to diversifying our department, and it shows in our recruiting and hiring. But I just want to, I guess, provide a little bit of, maybe, I don't know if it's relief, but we're in very uncertain times, and I think that it's important to remember that concepts that happen at the federal level aren't going to change the way Bellingham does business. It just isn't. So, I mean, we all took an oath to support, defend, and obey the Constitution and the local laws. We are accountable to you and our local communities. And so as uncertain as every day seems to be, I think it's important to remember that how we're doing business in terms of the police department and even the city, it's unchanging. We're still doing what we've always done, and we've made commitments throughout our history, and our community has, and we are still committed to those things. And so I think that's just important to remember, that no matter what you see on the news, that those things remain the same.
Sorry, I looked at my phone. My deputy chief was calling, and we don't normally talk to each other outside of work. Well, we do, but not, so I was concerned, but I'll get it later. I'm going to go a little bit like how Chief Mertzig said. Yes, we do. We're not civil service, but we have a lot of checks and balances through the university and our hiring. It goes through our civil rights and Title IX office. There's somebody in there that looks at all the entire process, and we have to go through a whole computer database thing and move people places and explain on every single one why we didn't hire that person and why we hired this one over that one. So it's very detailed. But recruiting and hiring in law enforcement has been since my 8th year in law enforcement. I took over the training division at the agency in Illinois. And with that came training, recruiting, and hiring. And even when I left that area, they left recruiting and hiring with me. And any other position I had to go to, they're like, keep doing it, keep doing it. And it's thinking outside the box. It's looking at different things. It's talking to your community and asking. It's recruiting from elementary school up, and it's what I tell our officers, it's every single contact you have with the community, you're recruiting, and you're trying to get somebody, because they know somebody who knows somebody who wants to be the police. It's even the people you arrest, that it's how you treat them. They tell other people what that is like, and so it's having a positive contact. And recently I did send an email to all the chiefs in Whatcom County, because we're only going to make Whatcom better is if all of our agencies are diverse, and all of our agencies do that. So I did send some ideas and some things that we did in Illinois. I only have a minute, so I can't go into a lot of details, but my last year there, we increased our minority and female applicants by over 500%, just based on some of the steps and some of the different things that we did. So it can be done. It takes some work, takes budget, it takes a lot of stuff, and so I think as a whole county, we could work together and increase, because we all rely on each other. It doesn't matter if it's at one agency or the other. I think just increasing diversity is needed.
I made it. You did it. Go ahead. Are your departments strictly following the Keep Washington Working Act? And what are you seeing in a way of ICE presence in our area? And start with Roger.
So I'm a border agency. So I see a lot of federal law enforcement in my community. On our port, we've got the Peace Arch and the truck crossing and the commercial truck crossing. We are the busiest port west of Detroit. We have a population of just over 6,000 people, but we have approximately 60,000 people that go through our town every day because of those ports. We also have a couple of different Border Patrol offices in our town. So I don't know that I would ever notice if there was a change because they're there all the time. Just that's where they live, that's where they are. We have great partnerships with them, but I have great partnerships with the fire department too, and I don't go put out house fires. We have different missions. If the 911 call comes out for a fire, the fire department will go. If there's an immigration issue, the immigration people go. If there's a burglary, we go. That's what I highlight is we have different missions. And so although the Keep Washington Working Act exists, throughout my career, I haven't really seen it be an issue. It's not what we do. When I was a deputy all those years, not once did I ever make an immigration arrest. It just, again, not what we do. I will highlight just a little bit that there is current litigation going on in our state with the Keep Washington Working Act where law enforcement is really put in the middle, and that's not where I want to be. I want to serve our community, but we're starting to see grant money tied towards our level of cooperation or lack of cooperation, and it's coming from both federal and state, and we just don't want to be a part of it. We just want to, and that's why I focus on our mission. And it's a non-issue for me because we just keep doing what we're doing. So short answer, yes, we follow it.
Rebecca, you want to follow Roger?
Yeah, that's easy. That's an easy question. Yes, we follow it. I'm going to steal that analogy. When the fire department, you call the fire department, right? That's great. It's one of the second question is, what was the second part of that?
What are you seeing in regards to the presence of ICE?
Yeah, so all of us on stage, plus the other chiefs in Whatcom County, we all meet regularly, and we also meet with our federal partners. And there's a great sense of like they know our position, and they're not going to put us in jeopardy, and vice versa. So it's one of those things where we have kind of a shared understanding of you do you, and we're going to do us, and we all know the rules here. So so I super appreciate that. I think when stuff was hitting the headlines, I got a phone call after it happened, and so they do a very good job of kind of and when I say they, I mean HSI and ICE they're doing their jobs, and sometimes it is in our community, but they're doing I appreciate the fact that that we all know what our missions are and they are separate.
Yeah, first I think I can speak to everybody here on this podium and law enforcement in general. That we understand members of our community may feel fear and anxiety about the immigration enforcement that's going on. Please know that all of us up here and everyone at the Sheriff's Office, your safety and trust matter to us. It's our number one priority, is making sure you can contact us, ask for help, and engage in our deputies and other law enforcement officers without any fear. That's really what we want. In January, Sheriff Tanksley issued a public statement regarding our involvement in federal immigration enforcement, which is we're not involved. While we do not participate, we don't interfere, we don't hinder federal immigration enforcement, but we do maintain long-standing relationship with our federal partners to engage in other criminal conduct. For example, HSI, which is an agency part of ICE, does a lot of work with us related to child issues and part of our ICAC task force, which is Internet Crimes Against Children. So a lot of our federal partners work on issues that aren't immigration related, even though they're operating under this big umbrella of ICE. And then also the last thing to say is we actually have policies about immigration enforcement. I'm sure the other agencies do as well, that we comply with the Keep Washington Working Act. And the AG's office actually put out model policies that there's a website of most police agencies in Whatcom County have policies specifically targeting immigration enforcement, and that we're not doing it.
Yeah, and actually, I printed out to bring with me just the frequently asked questions section of that, and I wish I wrote down the website, but if you search Keep Washington Working, you'll find, for law enforcement, there's a guide there, and it's laid out real simplistically of what the law says, what we can do, what we can't do. It's real clear, it's big bullet points. It's easy for us cops to read. So.
Yeah. So on campus, we follow it as well. Not only do we have the Keep Washington Working Act, then there's the RCW law that says how we do not assist in immigration, and then also as the university has their own university policy that says no employees can also will not also help enforce immigration or provide any information for immigration. And so as university employees, we follow that too, our officers do. Not only that, I work very closely with our assistant attorney generals as well as our chief diversity officer, and we put together trainings and plans for our campus community because a lot of our students are very, very fearful of what this could mean and could they come to college campus. It used to say that on the website for immigration, it used to say they wouldn't go to churches and they wouldn't go to college campuses. That has since changed, and so because of that, we've had a lot of trainings about it. Roger mentioned, and I think Steve, you also mentioned it, there's a lot of information out there. We highly, highly recommend that you do go to the Attorney General Office's website and follow those, what are my immigration rights, and you should follow that. As well as what we tell our community is you call the police. Call us, we'll come and we'll take a look at the paperwork. I went to training with the Attorney Generals to verify this is what the documents should look like when they're criminal, this is what the documents will look like when they're civil or administrative, and we do not assist this, depending on what it is, we may have to, and then we call our assistant attorney generals, which we have 4, and we have everybody's numbers, and so they're supposed to call the police, our officers are trained in it, and then they call the deputy chief, and the deputy chief calls me, and we all show up, and we all assist. So it's very in-depth at the university because, I mean, they're adults, but they're kids. And so we want to make sure that we're there to just keep our community safe.
I'll actually add a little call to action too, because I think one of the things that I can probably speak for all of us when I say we fear, is that somebody who's fearing immigration is not going to call us and they're a victim of a crime. And unfortunately, there are people that are predators in this community that will seek out those folks to victimize because they know they won't be held accountable. So if you can help us with spreading the word of, I also run a dispatch center, so your point of contact when you call 911 is governed by the Bellingham Police Department. So we just really want to get that message out there that if you're a victim of a crime, and we aren't going to ask anything about your status.
Now, this has been really interesting. I have a question. You've touched on it on some of your other answers, but it says, many of us feel uninformed and want to build better communication networks between the police and our growing and diverse community. How are community members invited to participate in policy decisions or give feedback to our local police departments? And let's start with Katy.
So at the university, I have a police advisory council that is made up of some faculty members, like risk and ethics, our Title IX office, the associated students, and we meet quarterly and other times if it's needed, and I just run things by them. Like, hey, how do you think this will impact the community? This is a big change that's going to be coming in the police department, and this is how it's going to impact, and how could we get this message out to the university better? I've just rewritten and updated our use of force policy. So any of our high liability policies, not only do we update it and get feedback from the Attorney General's office, from other police departments that are accredited, such as Bellingham, because we work very closely together, I also gave it to them to have them look at and say, like, hey, this is the standard we're going to hold our officers to. Do you see any holes? Do you see anywhere that people can slip through and do things that we shouldn't have happen on, or our officers can slip through and do things on our campus that they shouldn't? So I regularly just reach out to them, and then 2 of them, they're the two faculty members are sociology professors, and so I do go to a lot of their classes also and just talk about this is what the police department does, this is how you can give us our feedback. And then I did mention that we're trying to proactively reach out to whatever calls for service our officers go to and get feedback on what that interaction was like. And then it's just constant meetings and talking to people and just being very open and transparent, which I am. And so I'm now getting a lot more emails, but it's okay. It's all good.
Thank you very much.
Yes, what I try to do is just get out as much as I can and talk to people. And I try to make that as natural as I can. I do events like this where we talk, and this is great, but what I really prefer is smaller conversational type approaches. And so the Senior Center in Blaine is kind of our community center where most of our events are, and I enjoy going there, and as much as possible I try to have that conversation sitting in the crowd versus up on the stage. I like to be a part of the circle, not looking at the circle. Another group that I go to regularly is Birch Bay and Blaine Thrives, and it has both adults and teenagers as a part of that. They recently put on a presentation on trusted adults. I made sure that I was there to interact with the kids. I mean, those are our future leaders right there, and the insight that I get from those kids is just amazing. I get out, I walk up and down through all the businesses, I check into the businesses as often as I can, and just try to be approachable and talk to people. The conversations is the key for me, and as natural as those conversations can be, the best. I'm a member of the Domestic Violence Commission, so I go to those meetings and just network with as many people as I can and encourage people to reach out.
I would say, I mean, I can't speak for all of us, but community engagement's one of my favorite parts of this job. I wish I could do more of this. This has been an amazing week because just yesterday we had the Downtown Partnership annual meeting, and so those, like Roger said, those are the kind of events that I really, it's where you have those conversations and you really get to know people in where it's less of us talking at you. I think those are great opportunities. I also have a Chiefs Advisory Council. It's very well representative of the community. We meet monthly, and it's a chance for me to present to them, major policy decisions and let them know what's going on with the department, have them provide feedback to me. And again, there's representatives from education, from the business community, and it's very diverse. So, I mean, there's a whole kinds of ways. We also have a very active social media presence, and so that's another way to engage with us. And yeah, that's all I can think of right now. There's probably more that I'm missing.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to, I'm sure all of our organizations have volunteer things. For example, Whatcom County right now is obviously looking at building a new jail. So there's committee organizations. One is the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. There's, we're in a meeting earlier today on jail financing. So I would sincerely ask that you go to your city council sites or your city website or your county website and look at volunteer opportunities and participate in community groups. I know Sheriff Tanksley and the chiefs often meet with the communities to listen to concerns about stuff like that. For the sheriff's office, one thing I will actually tell you is a great program, and we're doing it right now, is our community academy. It's a 12-week program that starts in May of every year. We bring on speakers from all different aspects of law enforcement, and it's an opportunity for members of the community to ask lots of questions, get presentations on our jail operations, our civil operations, our canines, and we have tours, and it's just a really good opportunity, and it's available for any community member who's 16 or older. This year and last year, we had a lot of students from the community college that were getting partial credit to come. So again, I definitely encourage you to be involved.
That's wonderful. What?
Yeah, it's called Community Academy.
Oh, Community Academy. Do I have the other questions available? Somebody have any other questions for me? David? Yeah. So these are audience questions. We'll see what they have. So this is a concern that a lot of people have raised, If we observe unidentified cars and people restraining someone, should we call 911?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right, good. I guess that'd be fine.
What happens when, trying to talk loudly, what happens when, I'm part of kind of immigrant support efforts in the county, and what happens when we see a group of cars and individuals stopping someone and they've got no ID on them?
That's,
And when we ask them, they don't say that they're police or federal agents or anything.
Call 911.
Yeah, call
that's,
911.
that's the same question, yeah, that, but you're just clarifying it, yeah.
And
That's what this one is too.
oftentimes when agencies, either from outside our area or federal agencies, they'll often let our 911 center know, not to get us involved, but when you call 911, they can then, the dispatcher is already aware of it, they have vetted it, and they can, I guess, alleviate some fear that, yes, that's legitimate law enforcement, because that's a big fear that people may have too, is that, are these just bad guys pretending to be somebody, or is this legitimate? And oftentimes they'll have a heads up and they can say, yep, we're aware, thank you for calling, and it's a lawful action.
Yeah, a community that's very difficult to know. I was, when I was with the sheriff's office in Snohomish County, I was supervising the violent offender task force. And that probably appeared very suspicious because those guys would show up, they'd throw their vests on, they've got jeans on and hoodies, and we literally snatched people out of their cars, but they were violent criminals, but we were there for legitimate reasons, and so I could see how that could be alarming if you don't know if it's legitimate or not.
You'll see them wearing masks or hoodies sometimes. It's because they work undercover, and to protect their identity in their investigations and their security, they're legitimately needing to cover their faces for that. So it seems scary, but there's legitimate reasons for it sometimes.
Yeah. There's just been some stories in the news that I think have made people very anxious, and rightfully so. I can't quite read one of the words here. Eileen?
The university shall get it.
Yeah, that's right.
Upside down.
Here's the question. Many in the community want to see public data on public activity. The Sheriff's Department has a public dashboard. When and if will other agencies develop these? That's actually a very good question, and exactly what I want to do. I want a whole huge transparency page that says this is the number of calls for service we've been on, this is the number of times we've used force, this is the number of complaints we've had, this is the new hiring, this is all of that. So we are at the university, we are in the work of developing that. Just like everyone else, we have budget. We have budget, and recently what came back from the state is even less to universities and four-year colleges, and so while we're able to cut 13 million, we have another 13 million we have to go. So it's in the works. It's going to be all part of our transparency and being able, and it'll be like online where people can submit not just complaints, also positive comments about the work that our officer does, because it's not everything that we do is negative. So I think, and there's a lot of agencies that have it, but I'll let them talk about what they're going to do. But yes, I think it should be very transparent in everything that we do. Not everything we do, but those kind of things should be on our website.
I'll add that that's also a dream of mine. I've been wanting it since I started, and it's been cost prohibitive, but I do have a meeting, I think next week, with our IT manager where I'm going to really lean on him about getting that to our public, yes.
We have to do our own website stuff, that's why, and I just lost my executive assistant, so therefore it's on me now.
Yeah, we are lucky at the Sheriff's Office where we do have a very robust community dashboard, and I'll tell the other agencies it actually didn't cost us hardly anything other than our records management system actually tracks that data for us automatically, so you can go to our website and enter your address, for instance, and it'll show pin mapping of the crimes and the type of crimes that have occurred in your community, and shows all different sorts of data, so definitely go to the website. It's available for you.
What are you using, Steve? LexisNexis?
It's Spillman.
Oh.
Spillman Technologies, and it's a feature called ComStat, which maps criminal activity and all the calls that we take. Plus we have lists that come out every morning that shows everybody who was incarcerated the night before and what they were charged with. So it's all available. Plus all of our policies are on there.
I do want to admit to stay though. We also do have a crime log though, so all our crimes, and I get because I live in Blaine, I do see Blaine's. Our crimes are on our website, and then there's a very, very long report that we put out every year for Clery purposes, but it's always about the previous 3 years' crimes, not the ones that are happening right at when they're happening. So there is stuff about the university.
We have a really good, for as small as we are, we're only a 14-person department, but we have a very large social media through primarily Facebook and Instagram, but we post weekly every call that we have. And I've been asked, like, why do you put those calls? Nobody cares about those calls. And our approach is we put it all out there. The only thing that I have changed since I've been there as far as what we publish is I've reduced our addresses for the sake of privacy for those involved to just block ranges, whereas we used to publish the exact address. So I'm sure if you call in as a victim of a crime, you don't want us to publicly put your exact address out there. So instead, we just say it happened in this general block range of that area. I will give kudos to the sheriff's office. When I was there, I left as a chief inspector there, and I worked gathering some of the data that's on the dashboard, and it's very transparent at the sheriff's office. They include all the complaints that they get, all the use of force data, breakdown on traffic stops and the racial codes, how they're cleared, what the races were for the people that were stopped, and how the results of those are. The sheriff's office for years has done a really, really good job with that. It's harder for smaller agencies just with the manpower to make that happen. Sheriff's office has a crime analyst. I really miss having that resource. But we try to be as transparent as we can putting that information out there.
I will add, I will speak to you in the budget matter. Our software is expensive, relatively speaking, so okay. It's built in, and Bellingham has been using something, so I'll give you a pass on that part.
Makes me think of my uncle, though. He used to have a police scanner thing that he could listen into. That was a crazy time. Not sure about this question, but we'll see what you'd like to say. On May 6, 2025, Washington Police Accountability Advocates saw their priorities read police accountability fall flat after a vote by all state reps. The priorities included use of deadly force, restrictions, pulling drivers over, and blocking officers from lying during interrogations. None of this will be made part of the law this year. How will this impact officers in your enforcement agencies? Seems like you've answered this quite a bit, but would there be more you'd like to say on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, those, I'll just speak on a couple of those pieces of legislation. I serve on the WASPIC board as an e-board member, and WASPIC always has kind of their legislative priorities, but they will oppose or support certain bills that come forward. I think the deception during interrogation one came up last year as well. And I think it's important for the public to know why we oppose that. It's not that we want to lie to people, but there are times when not telling the truth can help in an investigation. And I'll give you an example. What if someone is in a home and they're wanted for some sort of violent crime? I have some options, right? I could deploy our SWAT team. We could have a standoff. Someone could get seriously hurt. Or I could say, hey, you have a package out here. Can you come out? And that's a total lie. But is that the safest way to get that person out of their home? 100% of the time. I also was a detective for crimes against children at one point in my career. Were there times when I told the suspect who's been committing a crime against a child that I totally understand why they did what they did in order for them to talk to me? 100% I did. But there was an end goal in mind, and I believe the ends justified the means in those cases, and that particular legislation would prevent that. So I think it's very interesting and unique that the primary testifier in that particular legislation was Amanda Knox. And even our legislatures called out the fact that, hey, your issues with the police didn't occur in this country. It occurred in Italy. So anyway, that probably a deeper dive than anybody wanted to go into that kind of stuff. But I can provide, there's other examples of some of that police accountability type legislation that actually makes it harder for us to do our job. And I think that's the heart of where a lot of that opposition comes from. We are absolutely in favor of accountability, but we also don't want to be hindered in giving justice to victims.
Another problem with that legislation was how overbroad it was. One of the elements of that is if we stopped a car, you could only deal with the violation you stopped him for. So let's say I stop a car for speeding, and the person's DUI. They're driving under the influence. Well, under that law, I could only deal with the speeding. So what am I supposed to do with a more dangerous violation that I just came upon? I think a more honest approach would be to say, if we, as citizens of the state, feel that we shouldn't be enforcing license plate lights, take that off the books. Don't make it a law. And instead, they're saying all these laws still exist, but officers, you're going to have to know which ones you're no longer allowed to enforce, even though it still exists in the law book. So it really complicates it for the officer. They sold it as we want to free up officers to have more free time to go after more serious offenses. But then they threw in the requirement that if you stop a car, you have to immediately complete a report and you can't do anything until the report is done. Well, that's actually creating more work for us. So I think it's just overbroad and it's a little bit dishonest in what we're trying to accomplish. And I would rather that if they want to accomplish something, that they just take those laws off the books that are no longer a priority. One of the things that they were going to allow us to keep enforcing were expired registrations, which is going to create revenue. So I have a little bit of a problem with, well, we're okay with you collecting revenue for us, but we don't care if you have headlights, taillights, license plates, mirrors. You can drive sitting on a milk crate, but make sure you pay our dues to our state. I'm like, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I'll agree with Roger. I think the law was too broad, but is it still? Yeah, it was a little too broad, but there were some aspects of it, and I'm going to be a little opposite, that I did think were appropriate, but again, it was too broad. If it passed, then all this stuff that we didn't want was also going to go with it, but then some of it, and this is my own personal, and it's just how I do my work, I don't like the lying. And I get the example you gave was great, and it really, really was. But when it comes to lying during an actual interrogation inside of a room, that's, I think, where the law and where the community was looking at is like, how do you know that, because it was used a lot against a lot of juveniles, and then that's how they ended up in the system, and that's where some of that comes from. So, and the training and the expectations from our officers, it's during those interviews and during those interrogations that lying, even if it's not within the law, is not going to be how they're trained to do it. Use your words, figure things out, communicate with the person, find out their level of learning, find out if they understand their rights, and there's a lot of things already written into Washington law that is not in other states. I've worked in Illinois and I've worked in Georgia. Giving them their rights and explaining it's very direct here, which I very much appreciate, that says you do not have to answer my questions and you can tell me to stop at any time, and we have to make sure that is happening. And so the way this law was written, yes, was very broad, but there are still parts of it that I think, but I'm going to say that the legislation here in Washington does not do a great job of narrowing things down for us.
Okay, thank you. You turned it off. You're good. This one, you just may have advice for us, I guess. What can we do to help de-escalate stress or harassment that we see before we call the police? When and how should we call the police? I think how would be 911, but when?
When you're safe to do so. Yeah, the question was about de-escalation. Obviously we get a lot of training in that, so I feel like our officers do a lot of great work in that area, but I think your average person may or may not experience that level of training. I guess my advice would be to, if you can walk away from confrontation, then you should, when it's safe to do so, and then feel free to call 911. I think that today's society, everyone has this great little handheld computer that also has a camera on it, and I find that in terms of general safety, when people are being recorded, their behavior may change. It's why we love our body-worn cameras, because it documents everything, and so that's another way to potentially de-escalate by having some sort of documentation of what's occurring, because quite often when we respond to something, it's listening to one side of the story, listening to the other side of the story, and having not been there, trying to figure out what happened. And so when things are documented well, then it obviously helps us out a little bit. I don't know if I'm getting to the heart of that question. That was, yes?
I would ask for you to be a good witness, but not engage. And I'll tell you a story from when I was a teenager. I saw somebody being assaulted with a stick, and I called 911 and said, I am so sorry to call this number. I don't know what other number to call. Well, that was absolutely the right number to call, and you're calling the people that have the equipment and the training, the radio communications, protective gear. Don't think to engage yourself. Being a good witness, filming, but don't engage. You may think that you're trying to de-escalate the situation, but you may be putting yourself in a bad position. I'd rather you just be a good witness and call us.
This comes up a lot on our campus because the students a lot of times do not want to call the police, which I do understand. So, but we talk to them and we explain. If you are witnessing some kind of interaction between two other people and you're not involved in it, yes, you just need to call 911 because you have no idea what's going on. If it's somebody that's coming to you and you're feeling, a lot of times it's student versus student, so when you're feeling a little harassed or what it is, I'm like, just call it out for what it is. Just say, hey, your behavior is making me uncomfortable, and then act. Because most people, in most of our situations, that is going to be like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Everybody has, it's trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes. They might have social anxiety. They may not know how to talk to people. They might just be frustrated because something just happened at home. But if you just point it out to the person, like, hey, your behavior is really upsetting me. Is that what you're trying to do? And if I always get this term wrong. When you put it back on the other person, and not ghosting. Gaslighting, thank you. And if they're like, no, that's not me, that's you, most likely they probably were trying to do something. So that's when you call 911. That's when you need to get the police there. Then I tell them that's when you need an adult in the room. So that's what you need to do, because a lot of times it's just they're uncomfortable, the other person's uncomfortable, everybody's trying to figure out how to communicate. Just call it out and just say, hey, you're standing too close, or you're getting too loud, you're making me uncomfortable. And even if it is a student, an adult, or two adults, that's the message that we give.
Yeah, I would just add some just general information for people that may not be aware. I mean, there's lots of situations where not only are people afraid to call 911, but they don't have the ability to. And I always point out to persons that even if you find any cell phone that powers on, whether you have service or not, it'll dial 911. So anyone who's experiencing homelessness, they don't have the funds, any cell phone that powers on, they can certainly call 911. And a lot of this I liken to a CPR event. What is the first thing you do before you give somebody CPR? Call 911, call assistance. And if there are really serious situations in which you don't want to be seen making a phone call, you can always dial 911 and stick it in your pocket. And the dispatcher and other end is going to be listening to what's happening, make an assessment of whether it's a pocket dial or not. But yeah, if you feel uncomfortable, definitely call 911. We're not a call center that is typically going to put you on hold. There's usually somebody there to answer the phone for you all the time. And for sure, there's always going to be a segment that's calling. We had a call about a person saying, it's dark outside and the kids are at the bus stop. Can you come take care of that? So there's always going to be those calls, but most often, please call if there's a concern and call early.
Aren't they accepting text messages at Whatcom now too?
Yes.
Yes,
that's
they are.
new within, last year, 2 years now?
Great point.
So you text 911?
You can text 911.
Oh, interesting. Well, we have one last question, and then I'll have some closing remarks. Somebody's curious about what's the nature of your relationship with federal and state National Guard, especially if we had some kind of civil unrest here. Is there a relationship protocol?
The only time in my career I've ever worked with National Guard was in 1996 when we had a really, really bad snowstorm, and they came out and helped drive us to calls because we couldn't get anywhere with the snow. But I've never worked with the National Guard in any other capacity.
Yeah, I think we have plans in place for civil unrest that don't involve the National Guard. We've actually been talking as a Chiefs and Sheriffs Association of how can we work together, train together, and deal with those kind of issues locally rather than having to rely on any kind of federal entity.
Okay.
We do work with our federal partners. They'll come, especially in the smaller agencies, they'll come cover us in emergent calls for life and death dangerous, but they're real quick to leave as soon as we get more resources there. So we had a call, we were in a standoff with a guy for over 5 hours. I had Customs and Border Patrol come to help keep our officers safe until the Sheriff's Office arrived to back us up, and then they all left. So they're there to keep us safe, not to do our mission.
I think it's important too to remember that these folks are working here and they are part of our community. I think especially if the big one hit, right? Let's say we had a school shooting in Blaine. I mean, who's going to say you don't want someone who cares for their community to go in and keep our kids safe? I personally would of course want them there. And so, but I think they also know how to balance their role and again, life or death only, and can deal with it from there.
We had a call in Blaine just a few weeks ago. A child saw a subject with a gun. It turned out to be a caulking gun by a maintenance worker, but the young child thought it was a rifle. But until we figured that out, we had Border Patrol, we had Customs, we had State Patrol, we had Sheriff's Office, we had Blaine. It's all hands on deck when our kids' lives are in danger. And we're very grateful that it turned out to be a caulking gun, but we're going to make sure they're safe first and figure it out.
Okay, well,
Yeah, does the FBI have authority over any of your departments?
No.
No, I would consider them a community partner though.
Only if they're investigating a civil rights violation that we're accused of. If we were accused of violating somebody's civil rights, it could be a department. It
There's a federal law.
could be a federal law.
They're also responsible for enforcing laws on tribal land.
So not our agencies.
not our agencies. Yes, we hope to get some of the other people here to speak from the Lummi and Nooksack and other jurisdictions in the county, so I hope we will keep this event happening and give more opportunities to hear from these people and build partnerships. We're done with those questions. We should have a little time maybe when people are done, because we might finish a little early. I had one last question. Well, there's two questions here. Your work is very stressful at times. What strategies and structures are in place to help your people keep mentally healthy, stay mentally healthy?
We have a really robust and something I'm very proud of at the Bellingham Police Department wellness program. We took the opportunity to contract with a clinical psychologist within our own agency. I think the industry as a whole is learning that we're exposed to trauma throughout our career. I think the average 20-year officer is exposed to approximately 180 critical incidents. The average person in their lifetime is exposed to 4. And so that cumulative trauma can really take a toll. It takes a toll on us physically, mentally, with our families. And so really recognizing that and changing the culture of I'm fine, everything's fine, move on to the next call is something that I think we're all very passionate about. So we our wellness program, again, it has everything from peer support. We've introduced chaplains back into our agency. We have wellness events that are done. We have a family engagement night happening in a couple weeks for families. And I think it's really about, hurt people. If your officers aren't well, then how are you expecting them to take care of people in their most critical time of need? So we made some heavy investments in our wellness program. It's something I'm really proud of. We also, we encourage a very well-rounded work-life balance as well. And I think our schedule allows for that. And I'm very happy with how officers are engaging in that process as well. Probably the landmark part of that is our vetted provider program. Our clinical psychologist has identified mental health providers throughout our community who are willing to, who are culturally competent and willing to meet with officers very last minute. I don't know if anybody's ever tried through traditional means to meet with a psychologist. Good luck. You say, hey, I'm in crisis, I need help, and okay, cool, we'll see you in 3 weeks, maybe, if we can find someone for you. And so we've completely eliminated those barriers for our officers, and many of them are engaging in that, including myself. I mean, I'll be honest with you, like this job takes a toll. We see stuff we should not see as a normal person. And so, but I think it's healthy. I think we need to talk about it. And I have no problem raising my hand and saying, I'll go first, and hoping that the rest of my agency follows suit as well.
I think something that's really changed in my tenure over the years is it has become acceptable to seek help, and we've developed peer support programs. So we've got designated officers. Most agencies have people that have gone through additional training to be there for each other, and they're recognized. And much like attorney-client privilege or spousal privilege or clergy privilege, peer support has some protected privilege, so you can speak freely with somebody you know and somebody you trust that's had some additional training. We focus on wellness the best we can with our small size. I permit our officers, it's allowed by policy for them to exercise on duty. They have to keep a radio on, they have to keep a uniform ready to go, so they have to interrupt their workout to go to a call. But the value of keeping people healthy, they'll live longer, they'll be happier, they'll be better responders to the community when they get out there if they have a good, healthy lifestyle. We try to get together as family, like you talked about family night. I had promotions last year, and rather than do that before city council, we reserved and had a pizza party, and not just for the officers, but the kids, the family. We made sure there's a place where there's video games and pinball, and it was a family event, and we celebrate each other that way. So just things that you can do that are away from work a little bit, that recognizes everybody. One of our officers, he's developed a wellness room, and it's just a place where they can completely unplug. There's nothing in there related to law enforcement. It's just a place they can go sit down and have some quiet time and just decompress a little bit.
Yeah, I would concur that definitely there's been a culture shift where we're more willing to recognize that PTSD is a real thing in all of our first responders, not just law enforcement. The things even in dispatch and the phone calls that they have to take is where it starts. So we've definitely taken that seriously at the Sheriff's Office along with the other agencies. When we do our swearing in ceremonies, one of the things that I always talk about to the family members that are there are to remember to keep your family member grounded with friends and family outside of law enforcement and public safety. It's really easy for all of us to just reach out to our peers and talk about the horrible things we see, but it's always a reminder to make sure that they stay grounded, that you get jaded in this profession, and you have to remember that, not everybody you see in the public is out to hurt you, that there's mostly good people out there who sometimes do things that get them into trouble. And like Bellingham, they have a really great program with an embedded clinical psychologist, and we were lucky enough to get some grant funding to have that same provider come into the sheriff's office and ride along with our officers and ask them about things and see the things that we see during the day. So he really has a great handle on what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And here in the county, we're having first responder trainings. Last year we had a 2-day event where we're inviting everybody, spouses even, to be part of the conversation in the community, because without our family members and our friends, then it's a lonely place sometimes.
There's a wellness retreat coming up that I'm sending one of my officers to down at the Swinomish Resort. And what's really cool about it is one of the presenters is a gal whose father was law enforcement. He actually worked for Whatcom County Sheriff's Office. So she grew up in law enforcement. She understands law enforcement. She married a law enforcement officer, and so she's got that heart for it. She just loves it. And so she's bringing it. She lives in Arizona now, but she's coming up here because she loves Washington, and she's giving that back. Another thing that's being developed, you've heard WASPIC mentioned a few times. WASPIC is Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. They're developing a wellness program for the executive level. And that's something that's been lacking at our level, is peer support, because I can't very well go to my officers and say, hey man, I'm having a really bad time for whatever issue we're working through, because that's not really who I should share it with.
We're not really peers, yeah.
Yeah, but we're developing it at an executive level through that association, resources for people at our level as well.
I don't have any much more to add than that, but because we do a lot of the same things as well.
Well, I just wanted to give all of you one more chance to share anything else you think we should understand more clearly about the role of the police, or anything else that you'd like to share as final comments. Do you want to just go down the line? All right.
I made some notes. I'm going to look at these. I did. I was like, there's a lot. There's a lot I want to say.
Cue the timer. No, just kidding.
Yes, give me the timer. No. And I'll go to the end part of it. But just really that as officers, we do a lot of different roles within the community. It's not just the prevention and education and humanitarian efforts that we do, but we have to understand so many different things. And so the same way over the last years that we've been taking a look at policing and taking a look at how we interact with the public, I'm asking also for the public to, hey, how have we been interacting with the police? And so, because I heard a lot when I first moved here, we don't want the police around, we don't want to see you in your uniform, we don't want to see any of this until then the phone rings and you do want us to be there. And now they're like, hey, take care of this problem. But if we're not part of the community and we're not at the table and we're not having these conversations on a regular basis, and we're not asking the questions, ask us the questions. Just be part of us, or let us there, then I think all these changes will just be positive and it'll be good. And I love working in Whatcom County. I'm now living here. I've only been here 2.5 years. I'm not from the state of Washington, but this is the happiest I've ever been in my law enforcement career, is in this community. So I see the work. I think it's great, and just keep having these conversations.
Okay, so I'll leave you with two things. The first is just know how committed to our community we all are on this stage, every single one of us.
I think it says that on your cars, doesn't it?
Weird, right? No, what I'm going with that is oftentimes the uniform and the badge are simply that. And what you see on the news at a national level, we get judged on that quite frequently. We saw that happen. And anytime a national incident occurs, and we're trying to be better about being very vocal about, when we see those same incidents, how giving our take on those things. But I think it's important to remember that every state is different. Every department is different, really. And we pride ourselves on the level of professionalism and the restraint used when we have to use force on our community. And it's, those are never pretty things. I think that a misnomer I'd like to always kind of address is I think there's an expectation that officers are going to make perfect decisions and be like Steven Seagal when it comes to having to use force on a person. But remember, we are plucking these folks from everyday life, and we're training them to the very best of our ability. And we can provide the best training possible, but they're human beings. And so that's a message I always like to share. And then last, I don't know if Bellingham really understands what it has in its police department. Again, I see every single use of force applied, and the amount of restraint and compassion and professionalism that's applied in those instances is just absolutely mind-blowingly phenomenal, because I also came from a different agency within the state of Washington. So I have room for some comparison there. But yeah, I'll wrap up with that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks for the league for having us here. It's a great opportunity for us to get out and communicate with the community, answer questions for you. And to echo the sentiments here, I think that our community in Whatcom County, we're very lucky. We are humans, and all of us in law enforcement make mistakes sometimes, but the thought that we protect our own and they're never going to be held accountable, I just think is not accurate. I can tell you in my role, and Chief Funk at the Sheriff's Office when he was there led the Office of Professional Standards, and I can tell you that we're always on the lookout for the bad apples. We recognize that it just rots agencies unless you take care of it, and we take lessons in being good bystanders. What's that word?
Able.
Yes, able training, active bystandering. where we have both ethical and legal responsibilities to report unethical conduct of our fellow peers. And it is happening, like I said, and unfortunately, no law enforcement agency is perfect, and you will see news stories about persons that are doing things they shouldn't have, but no, they're here. There's no trend to protect law enforcement from accountability. There's really not. Be lucky that you live here and not in other areas where we don't have that same reputation. And all of us here up here want to guard it jealously. We definitely don't want to go down that other road. So it's up to you as members of the community to keep us accountable, and we fully expect that.
My goal with all of you and everybody in Whatcom County, all the citizens, is that if an event happens somewhere else in the country where you see some horrific action by a law enforcement officer, that you recognize, yeah, that's bad, but that's not what we have. Not in Whatcom County. That's not our officers. That's not our police department. That's not our sheriff's office. That's not the way they work. I can walk up and talk to any officer. You guys can talk to any officer, and man, I'm sorry that happened over there, but we've got it good here. And I want to create just a whole fleet of advocates that know us, that recognize that. And Steve talked about the bad apples. Unfortunately, I've had the displeasure of having to arrest a police officer, somebody I've known my whole career, and it's uncomfortable, but we're willing to do that. When they deserve it, they deserve it, and we don't put up with it. We are required by law to intervene when we see something that is unjust and unlawful. It's not just something we should do, it's something we're mandated to do, and we can be held criminally liable for not doing so. And I'm proud of our officers because I've had incidents where our officers have come forward like, hey, Chief, you got to know what I just saw. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I want to make sure that we look into this, and they've told me about things for me to look into. They're not hesitant to speak up. It's the culture now is to, and be a good buddy too, because we can, if you see somebody getting amped up and starting to go down the wrong path, just give them a nudge. It's like, hey, why don't you take a break? Oh, just snap them out of it. You can save their career. And not that I'm saying I need to save your career, but be a good friend. Don't just like, wow, he's really, oh boy, he's going down the wrong path. Yep, he went down the wrong path. Be a good friend and just nudge him in the right way.
Well, this is excellent timing too. So I would just like to thank you all again very much for spending this time with us, and I hope to keep this conversation going, and we will post this on our website for people to listen to later and get some of those links out to people that you were talking about to become more informed. And thank you all for coming and spreading the word, and I think good night.
Thank you.